leader in MMA. Experience it on Fox Sports 2.
It's been nearly 3 years, but the UFC has returned to Indianapolis, Indiana. The city known for fast finishes might just see a few inside the octagon tomorrow night. And in the main event, the welterweights take center stage as former interim 170-pound champ Carlos Condit aims to avenge a stinging loss in his record. The natural-born killer's razor-thin split decision defeat came in his UFC debut at the hands of Martin the Hitman Kampmann. A perennial figure in the division's top 10, Kampmann looks for history to repeat itself. They've got 5 rounds to settle the score tomorrow night, but today they take care of business on the scale. It's the UFC weigh-in on Fox Sports 2, and it starts right now. We are coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, and are less than 24 hours away from the second card in UFC history on Fox Sports 1. Welcome, everybody, to the UFC weigh-in. I am Karen Bryan here alongside 2 men coming off of wins over fellow top 10 205ers, Mr. Chael P. Sonnen and Sugar Rashad Evans. Guys, no time to waste here. We got to get right into the main event. It is a rematch 4 years in the making. Carlos Condit takes on Martin Kampmann. Chael, I know you spoke to Carlos on UFC Tonight the other day. How important is it for him to avenge this
Karen,
loss?
I am so excited, and so is this crowd. Half of them were just chanting Condit, and the other half were chanting Kampmann. We thought we were going to need security up here. We're only through the weigh-ins. Listen, Carlos Condit has done it all. He's beat them all. I want to remind you, though, he's lost his last 2 fights, yet he still remains ranked number 2 in the world, and he should. He's that good. He's been in there with the best of the best. He's changed his training. This is a rematch, and I personally believe this is going to lie in the intangibles.
All right, and Rashad, for a question for you about Kampmann, is there any way that he's got an edge in this fight, knowing that he got the win the first time they met?
I would say no, and I would say no just because of this. Condit has been on a tear since they last met. He was interim champion. He's fought some of the best, and he's rated to the top of the mountain. Now Kampmann, he can have a great fight with him. He has to return back to his old form. The takedowns, the pressure on his feet, that's going to get him the edge that he needs to make this what it was the last fight.
It's going to be an exciting matchup. I cannot wait. Well, we are in Indianapolis, but this isn't the first time the UFC has come to the Hoosier State. For more on that and tomorrow's fight card, let's toss it to our UFC insider behind the weigh-in curtain, Ariel Helwani. Ariel?
You know, guys, I honestly believe that the crowd that showed up to this arena back in 2010 to watch, of course, UFC 119 headlined by Frank Mir versus Mirko Cro Cop was one of the very best in recent UFC history. Now, on that night, the main event didn't quite live up to expectations, but no one's really expecting the same kind of lackluster fight when Condit and Kampmann tangled for the second time. Also on tap, how about crowd favorite Donald Cerrone? He'll be looking to derail Rafael dos Anjos, who's blazing hot as of late. He's won his last 4 in a row, which is obviously no small feat in the stacked 155-pound division. And then there's Kelvin Gastelum, the most recent Ultimate Fighter winner. He's dropping down to 170, and he'll be meeting Brian Melanson, who looked so very good in his first UFC fight back in July. And then one I'm really looking forward to, Takeya Mitsugaki, the measuring stick. At 135 pounds, he meets El Goyito, Eric Perez, who's undefeated in the UFC thus far. You know, guys, this crowd really set a great standard 3 years ago, and they've been patiently waiting for the UFC to return. I'm looking forward to seeing if they can build on that great first impression here tomorrow night. Karen?
All right, thank you very much, Ariel. Rashad, in the co-main event, your boy Donald Cerrone is going to work. How psyched are you?
I'm very excited. You know, Donald is looking to come back. He had a great fight with KJ Nunes. Now he's looking to go even further and even just destroy and get where he was before he had the hiccup when he fought Pettis. Now I believe that Donald is going to show a new side he hasn't before because now he's mentally strong and he's ready to fight.
I'll see your Cowboy Cerrone, and I will raise you a Kelvin Gastelum, my guy from this season, 17 of the Ultimate Fighter. He was the champion. He's young. He's undefeated. He reminds me of you, Rashad. He's coming. He's at a new weight class, and he is ready to fight.
That is quite a compliment. Well, we are going to hear more from Ariel as well as Chael and Rashad during the weigh-in as I highlight news and notes on tomorrow's Fight Night competitors. When we come back, the weight cut is over as Condit, Kampmann, Cowboy, Kelvin, and 20 more warriors step up to the scale. John Anik takes the mic when the UFC weigh-in returns on Fox Sports 2.
What's up, Indianapolis? Great to be back here. Chrissy Blair is in the building. The best matchmakers in the business. They are Joe Silva and Sean Shelby. And of course, the one and only Burt Watson is here as well. 12 fights for you tomorrow night here at the Fieldhouse. We begin with the early prelims. First up in the lightweight division, Roger Relentless Bowling versus Abel Killa Trujillo. First fighter to the scale, Abel Trujillo.
My Black Zane teammate Abel Trujillo had a smoking hot UFC debut, but followed that by a lopsided loss. Now he looks to have a great performance and show people that he is everything the early hype said he is, and he is a contender for the weight class.
$155 for Abel Trujillo. And his opponent, Roger Bowling.
155 and a half.
155 and a half for Relentless Roger Bowling. All right, our next bout in the welterweight division, Zach Cummings versus Benny Blanco Alloway.
Benny Alloway, one of my personal favorite fighters. He and his beautiful wife recently, just over a year ago, welcomed a son into the world who I'm flattered to say they named Chael.
$170 for Benny Alloway. And his opponent making his UFC debut, Zach Cummings.
$170 and a half.
170 and a hook for Zach Cummings. All right, now we get to the prelims on Fox Sports 2. First up in the welterweight division, James Head versus Jason, the Kansas City Bandit High. First fighter to the scale, Jason
Tomorrow,
High.
UFC Fight Night on Fox Sports 1 brings you a welterweight bout featuring the rematch you've been waiting for between Carlos Condit and Martin Kampmann. Plus, Donald Cerrone versus Rafael Dos Anjos, live from Indianapolis. Condit versus Kampmann 2, tomorrow starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Sports 1.
$171 for Jason High. And his opponent, James Head.
An Oklahoma resident, James Head, announced recently that he'll be donating his entire fight purse to the victims of the tornado that devastated Moore, Oklahoma earlier this year.
$170 and a half for James Head. All right, moving on now to the featherweight division. Darren the Damage Elkins versus Hatsu Hioki.
Tonight on Fox Sports Live, join Jay Onright and Dan O'Toole, along with Donovan McNabb, Andy Roddick, and Carissa Thompson, as they bring you all the scores, news, and highlights you need. Fox Sports Live tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1.
$146 for Hatsu Hioki. And his opponent, Indiana's finest, Darren the Damage Elkins.
Who is Darren Elkins' best training partner leading up to this fight? Well, that would be his wife, of course. Mrs. Elkins is a triathlete who recently completed a half Ironman. That's 70.3 miles in a little over 7 hours.
$145.
145 for Darren Elkins. All right, next up in the welterweight division, Justin Fast Eddie Edwards versus Brandon Ruckus Thatch. First fighter to the scale, making his UFC debut, Brandon Thatch.
Perhaps as impressive as Brandon Thatch's current 8-fight first-round winning streak is the fact that in his spare time he likes to spit fire and spin light sticks. I kid you not, check it out on YouTube, it's pretty incredible.
$170.
170 for Brandon Thatch. And his opponent, Justin Edwards.
$170.
170 for Justin Edwards. Moving on now to the featured bout for the prelims on Fox Sports 2 in the middleweight division. Dylan the Villain Andrews versus Poppy Abedi.
September 4th, The Ultimate Fighter comes to America's new sports network, Fox Sports 1. Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate coach both women and men competing to become the next Ultimate Fighter. The new season premieres Wednesday, September 4th on Fox Sports 1.
$184.5 for Poppy Abedi. And his opponent, Dylan the Villain Andrews.
Dylan Andrews fights for the pride of his home country, New Zealand. He recently stated that he and Mark Hunt carry the MMA torch for that country. And you know something? He's right.
$185.
185 for Dylan Andrews.
Joanna.
All right, time now for the main card on Fox Sports 1. We begin in the middleweight division. Brad Tavares versus Bubba the Menace McDaniel. for Bubba McDaniel. And his opponent, Brad Tavares. $186 for Brad Tavares. All right, we move along now to the bantamweight division, and it's a good one. Takeya Mizugaki versus Eric Goyito Perez.
Eric Perez has battled all the way back from a potentially life-threatening staph infection, which led to depression, which led to him overeating, which led to him ballooning up to 180 pounds. But El Goyito now says he feels 200% healthy.
$135.5 for Goyito. And his opponent, Takeya Mizugaki. $135.5 for Takeya Mizugaki. Next up in the welterweight division, a matchup of Ultimate Fighter winners, Court McGee versus Robert Whitaker.
Whitaker spent the majority of this training camp at the TriStar Gym in Montreal, and when he wasn't training, he was playing video games. Lots and lots of video games. The Australian says he averages about 6 hours a day.
$170.5 for Robert Whitaker. And his opponent, Court McGee.
Court McGee spent most of his UFC career fighting middleweight, but feels his MMA game is evolving. Dropping down to welterweight in his last fight to dominate Josh Neer, he says his best is yet to come. $170 for Court McGee.
Next up, we stay in the welterweight division. Kelvin Gastelum versus Brian Melanson. $170 for Brian Melanson. And his opponent, the Ultimate Fighter winner, making his UFC welterweight debut, Kelvin Gastelum.
Kelvin Gastelum, I had the pleasure of coaching this young man on Tough 17, where he was the champion at 185 pounds. He's dropped 15 pounds to 170, which may be his toughest battle this weekend.
$170 for Kelvin Gastelum. All right, now we get to the co-main event in the lightweight division. Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Rafael Dos Anjos.
Rafael Dos Anjos, he has won 4 in a row in 5 of his last 6. 3 times of the night winner, fight of the night, knockout of the night, submission of the night. He's won them all. And guys, what I love best about him is he lost his first 2 UFC fights, and it doesn't matter who you are, we all love a comeback.
$155.5 for Rafael Dos Anjos. And his opponent, Donald Cowboy Cerrone.
Donald Cerrone's biggest opponent has never been the guy across the octagon from him. It has always been himself. He has been using sports psychologists and feels confident and, for the first time in a long time, mentally ready to fight. $156 for Cowboy Cerrone. All right, now it is time to take a closer look at the 2 men involved in tomorrow night's 5-round welterweight main event.
This is a tough fight for the judges to score because it has been back and forth. And the fight will go to the judges' scorecard. Great fight.
Declaring the winner by split decision, Martin the Hitman Kampmann.
That was my UFC debut. You know, I was disappointed that I lost. I was disappointed in myself. I had that victory at my fingertips and I let it slip away.
Carlos Condit has grown in stature from that first fight to becoming a guy who challenged for the title and knocked down George St. Pierre with a head kick.
Condit swarming St. Pierre! George is in big trouble!
That's how good Carlos Condit is, and that's also how much Carlos Condit has improved from the first time we saw him in the octagon against Martin Kampmann.
Carlos Condit's got plenty of reason to be worried about me. I was the first guy he lost to in the UFC, and I know that's got to be nagging him. He's mistaken if he thinks he's going to be able to avenge that loss.
There's a reason why Martin Kampmann has been in the UFC's top 10 in the welterweight division for a long time now. He is an elite fighter with no weaknesses.
Kampmann has a guillotine choke that's very tight on Thiago Alves.
When we come to fight, it's going to be a war.
We're both coming in to make a point. That's going to make for a violent, volatile combination.
It's a must-win fight for both fighters, and it's a huge opportunity for Martin Kampmann to jump to the front of the line.
Just outstanding.
It's too bad he waited 4 years to kick my ass, because he's going to be very disappointed. I'm going to kick his ass again.
Oh, just like that.
I'm dangerous, man. I'm in a dangerous place. I wouldn't want to fight me right now.
Condit with a flying knee.
I'm going to go out there. I'm going to look for the finish.
First fighter to the scale, making his 17th UFC appearance, Martin the Hitman Kampmann.
Typically, Martin Kampmann is a slow starter, but he said it's not going to take a beating before he gets into his groove. With almost a year since his last fight, he feels his body's recovered and he's ready for a 5-round war.
170.
170 for Martin Kampmann. And his opponent, the former UFC interim welterweight champion, the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit.
Condit still believes that he deserved to beat Martin Kampmann back when they fought on April 1st of 2009. And while that loss snapped an 8-fight winning streak for the natural-born killer, a win tomorrow could prevent the first 3-fight losing streak of his illustrious career.
170 and a half.
170 and a half for Carlos Condit. How about a hand for your main eventers, ladies and gentlemen, Martin Kampmann and Carlos Condit. Thank you all so much for coming out. We'll see you back at the Fieldhouse for the fights tomorrow night.
Thank you very much, John, as we welcome you back to our Fox Sports desk. Karen Bryant, Chael Sonnen, and Rashad Evans here. Condit versus Kampmann 1 was a 3-round main event that had the judges split, but tomorrow's rematch is scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds, and I actually believe this is the exact kind of fight that demands that. Now, Chael, how important and how useful are those extra 10 minutes going to be?
Well, mentally, it can really wear on a guy. Some people have a genuine fear of fatigue, and when you get in an athletic competition like this where it's combat, that can put you very vulnerable. Now, Condit has gone through this 2 times, as a matter of fact 3 times in the last 2 years. Kampmann has been scheduled for 25 minutes 1 time, but it never went the distance. It will favor Condit.
It definitely will favor Condit, especially since the fact that Kampmann wrestled a lot in their first meeting. That wrestling in 5 rounds will wear you down, so it's going to take a long time for Kampmann to try to find his groove. I would say that Kampmann should start off just slow and let it build up to that, but also push the pace. Trying to get the takedowns, pushes the pace, and it puts Condit on his heels, and that's what he needs to do.
But I'm not sure it's going to go all 5. I'm not sure. Well, we're going to take a look at tomorrow's UFC Fight Night schedule. The early prelims begin at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can catch those on YouTube or Facebook. I know you guys can multitask, so have your computer open and be sure to catch the UFC Fight Night pre-fight, also at 5 p.m. right here on Fox Sports 2. That's followed by the UFC Fight Night prelims at 6. And finally, the main card, Condit versus Kampmann 2, begins at 8 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. When we come back, we're chugging along here in Indy. We're going to hear from Carlos Condit up next and find out what he's been working on ahead of tomorrow's main event rematch when we return on Fox Sports 2.